Hello, everybody. Hello!
It's your old pal, Pee-wee Herman. So I want to let you know my friend Mike is going to be coming on here in just a second. He's going to be giving you a review of
My brand new documentary. You're about to watch Micah. Micah. Let's take a closer look.
So I just watched Pee-wee as himself on HBO Max. HBO did a fantastic job of this documentary. It was insane. And I wasn't gonna do this, but I thought, why the heck not? I'm a huge fan. I did a video years ago when Paul passed away. A lot of people, it had a good response. A lot of people kind of cared what my thoughts were, my feelings were of someone that I looked up to growing up, a childhood friend who later became an adult friend, and then someone that I met and had an experience with. It was something I'll never forget, especially the day he passed. That immediately flooded through my mind. And today, 7 years ago today, when I'm doing this video, it's the day I met Pee-wee Herman at MegaCon in Orlando. It was one of the greatest days in the world. I had to do it. If you haven't heard that story or seen that video, I'll attach it to this. You guys can check it out. Please watch it. It was a very weird, different type of video for me. Kind of like what I'm doing now. I'm in my collection room. This is where I go and put my collectibles, my things. And I think a lot of this stems from just my generation. I was born in '88, so tail end of '80s, early '90s, when people were still acting like it was the '80s, in all the '90s. Every movie I saw, the main character had a collection, whether it was Ernest, Mr. Bean, Pee-wee Herman. Pee-wee, he wakes up in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, you see all of his toys in his collection. If you see any of the Ernest films, anytime you see Ernest's house or any like his room or anything, it's just a bunch of collections. And I think that rubbed off on me. I mean, there's a whole 360 of this room, but you can't see it. And I thought this would be the perfect backdrop for this review. I've never done a film review ever on YouTube. I think I've may have gone to see a movie here or there and was like, hey, it was good. It's not a review. We're going to talk about Pee-wee. We're going to talk about a lot of things. And first off, the documentary. I knew it was going to be heavy, but I don't think others knew the magnitude of. Paul was one of those people that the whole world was in his hand, and then the world turned its back on him. But now let's talk about the documentary. We've been waiting so long. Man, when I tell you, I felt like it was right after he passed. It was kind of circulating on the internet. Like people were saying I heard Pee-wee Herman has a documentary coming out. And I heard it's about his entire life. It's going to be this huge thing. Like people knew about this stuff. It's kind of weird how people know about these things and then we all find out, later on. And it's cool how word of mouth works. The documentary was so hyped before it came out. Like everyone knew about the Pee-wee documentary. It was kind of crazy how they promoted it. It was like a premiere, like an old-fashioned Hollywood premiere, especially with the marketing and the clips they threw in. We're going to get to break it down and everything, and I'm going to go over some of my favorite parts and things. I loved how this felt like almost the re-premiere of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I want to see if someone has the full footage. I know Paul does because we saw it in the documentary. I would love to see the full Pee-wee's Big Adventure premiere at the Chinese Theater. Eddie Murphy showed up. Everyone showed up. That was if you were in Hollywood that night and you were a celebrity, you went on principle. Everyone was a fan of Pee-wee Herman in the 80s, like Paul stated. Now let's talk about this documentary. It starts off, spoilers. There are some spoilers on this. But it starts off talking about him and his family moving to Sarasota, Florida, and him kind of joining the circus. Immediately when he was talking about that, because I knew he lived in Sarasota for a while. I know that's where the other accident happened. But when he was talking about the circus and everything, Big Top Pee-wee came to mind, obviously. But then I started thinking about, Pee-wee does kind of have a circus act vibe to it. He surrounds himself with all these characters in all of his adventures. Cowboy Curtis could totally be in the circus. The Amazing Larry from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, totally in the circus, right? Even Mario the Magician. It was so like, whoa, I get it. He based a little bit on, the circus act. Sarasota also hitting close to home. It's right down the street from Orlando where I live. Then we got into the punk rock aspect of everything, and that was his troupe he was in. And the Groundlings footage to me was so incredible. I remember the Groundlings when people start to talk to me about Pee-wee, but the Groundlings to me is kind of like, that's where he came from. That's where he got his, that's where he took his punches. That's where he learned everything. And he took all of his knowledge. And it was so cool to kind of hear him say that he was trying different characters, actually getting on television with some of these characters. And some of these characters, they would frown upon that immediately today. But they were so funny. They were so just unique. And that was what Paul was to me, just so unique. Everything he did. So the Groundlings happen. And then we find out how he developed Pee-wee Herman. And this is where I saw the shift in the documentary. And I was kind of just, because I'm a fan of Paul Reubens and Pee-wee, I've seen videos of Paul Reubens as himself on Conan O'Brien and other talk shows and things that he has done. And I've watched a lot of 2020 interview things that he did. He did so much and talked about a lot of things, the accidents and other things. But I kind of got this feeling that Paul kind of wanted this documentary to be, this is not Pee-wee, this is Paul. And I'm Paul, and I'm going to be talking to you about my perspective of all of this. Not Pee-wee's perspective, but Paul's. He humanizes it. I have a buddy today, we were talking about it, and my friend said, Pee-wee is totally a comic book. Like it's a comic, like a cartoon. Not a comic book, a cartoon. Perfect example, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He's talking about the law with Mickey in the car, the convict. They pull up and he's like, the law. This is it, kid. And he's like, wait, I got an idea. They're in regular clothes. Next scene, boom, pull up. Pee-wee's in full drag, like Bugs Bunny would be. Mickey, full facial hair. They went into full disguise. And when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It's not only a circus, but it's a cartoon circus. He humanized everything by making himself known as Paul later in his career. And in this documentary, I feel like you got to know Paul, but there's a lot of Pee-wee in Paul. I feel like sometimes, and especially in some of the heartfelt moments in Pee-wee's moments in career and movies and things, some of the things you can see more Paul now. If you see more footage of Paul, does that make sense? You'll see in Pee-wee, man, that's a lot of Paul. It's cool. Kind of humanizes it. And that's why I was a huge Pee-wee fan, but I'm also a Paul Reubens fan. Now, he talked about the development of Pee-wee and the craze of Pee-wee, and he was like, my life was everything in the 80s. There was not a moment in the 80s that he was not included. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was in everything. Everyone wanted Pee-wee on their show, commercial thing. I mean, they wanted Pee-wee. It was Pee-wee mania, if you will. I, being born in 88, still had Pee-wee mania going on in my world. I grew up watching Pee-wee's Playhouse. It was cool to see in the documentary the beginnings of Pee-wee's Playhouse, how the artist was like into, punk rock, and he designed the Pee-wee logo, and then he also incorporated his artwork into the full set, and Paul knew that was the guy. And I wonder if that, I don't know, for some reason, I wonder if that kind of made me as a kid watching that stuff. And I always loved the Pee-wee logo. The Pee-wee logo was so cool. It was just this little head of Pee-wee, his little face, his smile, his little dorky hair, and it said Pee-wee on it, and it was just kind of like, ooh, I want to be friends with Pee-wee. Like, it was just, I don't know. And when you go to started going to punk shows and stuff, like people were Pee-wee fans, and it just kind of goes hand in hand. Especially knowing the artist and everything. There was like a record store next to Groundlings and everything. Like, it's such a wild world where Pee-wee's character, his world comes from kind of my same world. I grew up going to punk shows. I shop at record stores. I go to punk shows when I can. I still watch Pee-wee Herman. You know what I mean? It's a lot of things that influenced me and still influence me as an adult. And I think it's cool that I always find things with Pee-wee that, it's like, that's why I like Pee-wee. It's cool. I'm like that with a lot of other movies and figures, if you will. But Pee-wee to me is one of those things where it was like, this documentary needed to happen. I'm so sad it happened under the circumstances, but it needed to happen. So we get the development of Pee-wee, we get Pee-wee's Playhouse. When they show him walking around on set as Paul, it's so cool. He's wearing like jeans, smoking a cigarette, so cool. Sunglasses, got the script in his hand. He's like sitting on Cherry. I love that stuff. I love the behind the scenes stuff. Paul filmed a lot. He was like one of the first, like, I shouldn't say vlogger, but he vlogged his life. I feel like if you watch this documentary, you get a sense of, he just wanted to document everything and take so many pictures, and it was, I don't know, I think he looked at life a little differently. A lot of people use YouTube as a way to document their life, their travels, their journeys. Pee-wee was doing that without showing anybody. Like, I don't know who he was filming this for. Maybe for him for, you know, a rainy day, and he's sad, and or he's like just feeling nostalgic or something, and he's like, you know, we videoed us going to the Grand Canyon. Let's watch that. And he could pop it in and watch it. Like, I think that's so cool. They use a lot of the footage in this documentary. There's stuff of Pee-wee's Playhouse. Like I mentioned, there's early stuff of the Groundlings. There's his childhood stuff. There's literally footage of him on a tightrope in Sarasota, Florida. It's unbelievable, this footage and all the stuff he has. There's even a, spoiler alert, a clip of Paul being asked if you know, like they were talking, and somehow he was like, well, he's talking to the director, he's like, if I was doing this documentary, I'd probably just show a bunch of clips of footage of all my stuff and like a montage of photos. And it was cool that they did that in this documentary. They would pepper that stuff in. He'd be talking about, so there was the Groundlings, boom, there's footage, raw footage of Paul, high def. He had a great camera back in those days. High def footage of Paul and Phil Hartman, and then like the Warner Brothers footage, and then the Pee-wee's Big Adventure footage. I want an entire documentary just to Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Just give us everything, Warner Brothers. We want it. It was so cool to see that. Young Tim Burton, Paul, they should just release that on principle for future filmmakers just to watch. Because my gosh, it's such good footage. It's them out there, literally in all these weird places. There's this beautiful photo of Paul and Tim, was Pee-wee, and Tim Burton in front of the Alamo. And Burton's wearing a cowboy hat, like short shorts and cowboy boots, and they've got these like weird looks on their faces. You know, two creatives going at it with this film and everything. I loved all the Pee-wee's Big Adventure stuff. Was interesting to hear Paul's kind of point of view. Like him, he said this a lot. Spoiler alert. It wasn't Paul Reubens who had the success of Pee-wee. It was Pee-wee. Paul Reubens doesn't have the Hollywood Walk of Fame star. Pee-wee does. Paul Reubens, it's that kind of thing. And I knew when he was talking about in the documentary, saying, I flipped it from being known as Paul Reubens to just Pee-wee. Every time I appear somewhere, I'm just Pee-wee. I think that kind of comes with a little bit of responsibility and kind of some give and take. And I hate that it hard on him in the end. I hate that he had to deal with that. The realization of everyone only knows me for this character. I wonder if Jaleel White feels this way as Steve, because Jaleel White always was Steve Urkel in commercials, everything. It was never, hi, I'm Jaleel White. It was, hi, I'm Steve Urkel. And that's how Pee-wee was. This was a thing in the 80s. This was a very 80s, 90s thing. There were these characters that would just come in, and the only person I ever saw who kind of separated these things was Jim Carrey, except for when he did Man on the Moon. That was a whole different thing. But Jim Carrey would have the mask, Ace Ventura, but he wouldn't ever show up anywhere as like, hi, I'm Ace Ventura. It was, hey, I'm Jim Carrey. You know, I do these things. But in the 80s, you had these characters, Elvira, Pee-wee, Ernest, Steve Urkel, you know, the list goes on. There were all these personalities, and it was interesting to hear his point of view, because I always thought about that in a way. Like, I always thought it was interesting when he was doing the convention thing. Like, do people expect him to show up in the Pee-wee suit still? Like, does he appear as Pee-wee? Or is he just Paul when you meet him? And when he's just Paul when you meet him. But Paul has a lot of Pee-wee in him. I talked about it in my other video. I'll kind of share it with this. We talked a lot about a lot of things. And it was so cool talking to him about the filming locations. And when watching this documentary, I got the same feeling. It was like, yeah, that's Paul. That's the real Paul that I met when he was eating his cheese and his crackers, and his handler was like, can you keep him busy for like 10, 15 minutes? Yeah, sure. Bye. Paul, what's up? Right away, just like, so how are you two? Like, just talking to me and Abby, like, we've known each other for years. Let's get back to this documentary. I'm new to this review thing, guys. Give me a little break here. And the pacing of this was so good because when he's talking, they've got music happening. They've got all these clips happening. So you're seeing something while hearing something. And I think that, to me, makes things just a lot easier when you're trying to keep everyone's attention. So we get through Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then we start talking about Big Top Pee-wee. And a lot of people in this world may have seen it just once. And I think it's sad because this was the one that Paul worked on himself. This was the one that Paul had like full creative control. Like, I know he had like the final cut, all this stuff, and it kind of bombed. Didn't kind of bomb, it bombed. And that's unfortunate because anything to me that's Pee-wee has got the Midas touch. You could show me any Pee-wee's Playhouse episode, any Pee-wee commercial, anything Pee-wee, and I'm like, gold, bravo. But Big Top Pee-wee comes out, and I think a lot of people were like, I don't know. You know, my question to that movie was, thought you were a loner, a rebel? But in the documentary, spoiler alert, he talks about how the kissing scene in Big Top Pee-wee, he thought was so funny because it happens and it pulls out and it pulls out. And it's like the longest kissing scene. He did say it was like the most world record, I think, of the longest kiss on screen. I get the humor in it when he explained it. But I hate that he had to kind of explain that because it was the same kind of humor in Pee-wee's Big Adventure with the chain, you know, and he's pulling that chain and he's just like, you know. He brought back that same kind of humor in Pee-wee's Big Holiday, which I loved, with the balloon. He squeak, 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 like the longest, that's probably world record longest balloon squeaking on film too. But he did it. That was, I think, Paul Reubens at his finest moments, with some of his unique and irregular comedy. That's why we love Pee-wee. It's unique and irregular. This documentary was unique and irregular, 2 parts. And so we get through everything and wrap up part 1 with kind of like the Pee-wee on his high. You know, part 2 comes in, and that's when you start to humanize and it starts to get into the real, like the real of life, of his life, in our lives. And I'm kind of like Pee-wee. I like to live in a dream world where everything's just butterflies and sunshine. And that just is me. And in this documentary, it showed him kind of taking the realization of life. He never talked about himself being sick or anything on camera. There was a quote that they used in the promo of this, which kind of sucked you in, where he's like, death is just so final. And yeah, when he said that, it was just kind of like, wow. You know, foreshadowing in a weird way. Like, he was explaining things for a reason, and I think that's why in part 2 they show, this is the real part, they show him arguing with, not arguing, having creative differences and a creative discussion, which can sound like to certain people arguing, but it's just people being passionate about their work. Paul Reubens is trying to direct this, and the director is trying to direct this as well. And he'll have conversations in the documentary, and it's kind of cool. I love that they left that in. I love they left like the little jokes he says. Like, he goes on tangents for a while, where, you know, he'll do things like, no, I'm telling the truth. Or am I? Of course I am. Are you sure? You know. Only I know. You'll never know. Like, he does things like that. I love that stuff. That's the Paul Reubens comedy that's just, he's unique. He's Pee-wee. You know, he's my friend kind of thing. They show him having a conversation with the director, kind of having a full panic attack almost on camera. It kind of wraps up with him talking on the phone. And then they showed footage of his house, like they used footage. His house is amazing. He bought it when he was, I think he bought it with a down payment from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That's what he said. He liked it because he could walk out in the backyard and see the Hollywood sign. You made it, kid. Yeah, the sad ending was just a lot. I'm not gonna spoil it. See the ending. I was concerned, I'll tell you why. I was concerned the ending was gonna show us Paul sick, and I just couldn't bear to see that. It was interesting to see him with white hair. When I saw him, he looked like Pee-wee. He looked like Pee-wee's Big Holiday, because it was just a few years before. The documentary kind of leaves you happy in a way, because he got his wish, and you'll see. He's the luckiest boy in the world. What a good documentary. HBO, you did a knockout job. It kept me and my wife both intrigued. We watched both parts in one evening. From a Pee-wee fan's perspective, it was incredible. It was so cool to see this. I've seen everything out there, Paul Reubens or Pee-wee, you could possibly think. I look for photos. I look for behind the scenes photos all the time. I'm constantly looking online for anything behind the scenes of certain films. Pee-wee's Big Adventure being one of them. But the stuff they showed in this, I was like, I've never seen this. This is gold. That's what the fans want. That's what I want. I'd stream it every day. I give this documentary, I'm gonna go with a 9 out of 10. And the reason I'm not giving it a perfect 10 is because I'm selfish and I want more Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So it's a perfect 10. I thought it was a perfect documentary. I've seen a lot of documentaries on my favorite people, and it seems like it was someone else's agenda, you know, someone else's dream, their thing, and I get that. But when you're dealing with someone who's telling their story, it's almost like someone like Paul. I'm like, yeah, just buy a camera, Paul, you have one, push record and talk. Because he kind of did that in this with the aid of the director. The director did a fantastic job. It was a perfect marriage between the two. But Paul, it was good. It was really good. Now, I kind of want to bring up some of my Pee-wee collectibles. You met my friend Pee-wee, right? Yeah. Love this guy. I just got this guy recently. I always wanted one. I for some reason, every time I would find these in flea markets and things, they were destroyed. It was like a dog chewed on them. The suit was gross. This shirt is white as white can get. These shoes are in good condition. His hair, his makeup, everything. Even his real pull string, you can hear it. If you do it a certain way, you can hear it says, "Hi, I'm Pee-wee Herman." That was it. "Hi, I'm Pee-wee Herman." I would love to get that fixed if anybody knows how to fix the voice box. But yeah, I got a Pee-wee doll. Cool. Let's show him more stuff. My brother gifted me. This is so weird. It's Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Danny Elfman, but it's also Back to School, the soundtrack. And you flip it on the back, and there's like one photo of Back to School. No, two photos of Back to School. The other photo is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And you got Pee-wee double-sided here, as you can see. I don't know why they just didn't do Pee-wee. I don't know why we have to do the Back to School. Maybe it's not long enough to be a full release. I'm not sure. But this was given to me by my brother. This is my very first Pee-wee's Big Adventure on VHS. Sadly, I was in a band, and we were on tour, and we used to watch VHS in our van. One of the guys stepped on it. And the tape is still in it. And I don't want to get rid of this. I would want to, but I would love to transfer it over, because I'll tell you, in the chain scene, my VHS, this VHS, shows the bottom of his bike and the chain being fed through the little thing that he's pulling out. And in the DVD that I have, this, it's cut. But this has something special in it. There's a special feature on the back. Special commentary by Paul Reubens and Tim Burton. It's not a bad thing. Listen to it. It's so good. It's just Tim Burton and Pee-wee having a conversation, and they're reliving everything like it's the first time since they, probably at the premiere, watching it. And it's so good. I highly recommend this DVD. Now, I have some friends out there who work in the VHS world, so I would love to get this fixed. There's my Pee-wee mask, official Pee-wee mask, next to my Pee-wee autograph, Micah, your pal Pee-wee. And there's the photo of me and Pee-wee, Paul Reubens. And I'm not taking those things off my wall, but I hope you enjoyed my review, my discussion of this documentary. The music was wonderful. The cinematography was good. It was just weird, wonderful at the same time, and I loved it. And Paul was weird and wonderful and misjudged and just misunderstood, like a lot of us are. Thanks, HBO. From a fan, thank you. I wore my Hollywood Forever shirt today. This is where Paul lays to rest. That's the cemetery that Paul is living it up with. Vampira and Judy Garland and Burt Reynolds is there. They're all having a party. All right, this is my review. Do I just end it? Thanks for watching, everyone, if you made it this far. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. I'm thinking about doing some reviews on certain things. What do you think? Should I do it? Because I could do a whole discussion of Pee-wee's Big Adventure and talk about things you didn't know, scenes you didn't know anything about, where they are, places. I don't know. I'm still diving into this whole YouTube thing. I haven't been doing it that long. But I'll see you on the next episode. Stay weird. Goodbye.